So the last section in this factoring and solving part that you'll be taking a quiz over is going to focus on the calculator and how can we work with ones that maybe you couldn't factor and find these nice clean answers. So instead you have to be more reliant on the technology. So I want to make sure you have your graphing calculator in hand because I'm going to go through ones and show you step by step, button by button, how to do these with a calculator. So I have some steps here if you want to jot down these steps or maybe take a screenshot so you can get these steps. When you are trying to solve a quadratic using a calculator instead of using factoring, your first step is to make sure it's in standard form. Basically, what that means is make sure that the whole thing is equal to 0 and everything's on the other side. You're going to go to your calculator and enter it into the Y1 button. So just to remind you, your Y1 button is the button that is in the upper left corner. So that is your Y equals button. You're going to hit that button, and that is going to take you to this screen. When you're starting, you want to make sure there's nothing in the screen. So if you hit clear, make sure all your plots on the top are not highlighted. They should be looking like my screen. We should have a totally blank screen. Once you enter your equation into Y1, you're going to look at the graph, and I'm going to show you how you can move your window around. Your traditional window, your standard window goes 10 in each direction. So 10 to the positive X, 10 to the negative X, 10 to the positive Y, 10 to the negative Y. Once you have that window so you can actually see where what you're looking for is where does it cross or touch the X-axis. You're going to go to second and calculate. With the calculate menu, second trace is how you get there, and you're going to look for the button that says 0. When you do this on the calculator, it's going to ask you if you are to the left of where it crosses the axis. They call that the left bound, so you have to move your cursor around a little bit. It's going to ask you if you can move your cursor to the right of where it crosses the axis, and then it's going to ask you to guess, which I just hit enter. I want the calculator to do the work. Visually, here's what you're looking for. When you look at your parabola on your calculator screen, you're going to have one of three options. Either the parabola never touches the x-axis. So if my parabola is kind of floating above it, or it could even be like down here floating below it, that we would say has no solution because it never touches or crosses the x-axis. Then you could have ones that actually look like they're kind of like sitting on the axis, where instead of going through the axis, they just kind of touch it. It could look like this. It could also be upside down where the vertex just touches it like this, where you have that spot. That would have one solution. And then your last option is that it's a parabola that goes through the axis twice. So you have a solution the first time it goes through the axis, and you'll have a solution the second time. So those are your visual options that you're looking for to tell you whether they expect you to write one answer, two answers, or no answer. So let's practice. So with these, we are going, and it'll tell you in the directions. You will need to use a calculator. It will also tell you how to round it. I'm asking you to go 3 decimal places. You'll have ones on Delta Math that will ask you to round to either the nearest thousandth, which is 3 decimal places, or to the nearest hundredth, which is 2 decimal places. The first thing you want to do with all of these is get it in standard form. So make sure everything is on one side equal to 0. So you're going to have to bring this -1 to the other side by adding it. So if you want, sometimes I do that first. I try to get all of them in standard form. So I'm going to add the 3x to get that to the left, and then I'm going to subtract 3 to get that to the left. The third one already is in standard form. This one I'm going to have to add 8, and I'm going to add it to the constant term. So you got 3x squared minus 5x plus 7. So then you're going to graph it on your calculator. You're going to go to your y equals. So I'm going to pull up my calculator. Let me move this calculator over a little bit so you can see the first one. So in your y equals, you're going to type in x squared plus 3x. I forgot to hit the plus sign, plus 3x plus 1. You want to make sure you do type it in correctly because really there's no work going on. And so if you type the wrong thing, you're going to be looking at the wrong picture. Hit graph, which is the upper right-hand corner button. So this one, what I notice is I don't have to change my window at all. I can see the parabola. I can see that it crosses the x-axis twice. It looks like it crosses somewhere around -3 approximately, and it looks like it crosses somewhere around 0. To find those values, I'm going to go to second and then the trace button. So let me just show you where those two buttons are again. So second is your button up here, and then trace is here. That takes you to the calculate menu, which you can see the choices when you get to that point. We've been to this menu before. We want the button that says 0. So it's going to be the second one down. You could either scroll down 1 or you could hit 2. And you'll see your cursor, usually it's somewhere in the middle of the graph. You want to move it to the left by using your left arrow until you get before it crosses the axis for the first time. So here it is before it crosses the axis for the first time. You're going to hit enter. Then you're going to move your cursor past when it crosses the x-axis. So anywhere after it goes through the x-axis, like right there, you're going to hit enter. And then it's going to say guess. You're just going to hit enter. And it's going to tell you two things. It's going to visually show you with that like flashing cursor, and it's also going to list the zero, list the solution. So your solution, 3 decimal places, would be negative 2.618. So we knew it was around negative 3. We just didn't know exactly where it was. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other one. I'm going to go to second, trace to the 0 button. And again, I need to be the left. So before, left just means before it crosses the x-axis. So I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to use my right arrow to go through the x-axis, hit enter, enter one more time. And you get negative 0.382 would be the rounded 3 decimal places. Negative 0.382. And those are your answers. We call them our solutions. We call them roots. We call them x-intercepts. There's a lot of different names you can use for the same thing. For the next one, move my calculator back over again. I'm going to type in my new equation. So 2x squared plus 3x minus 3. Going to go to graph. So this one also has two solutions. It crosses 2 times. So I'm going to go to second and trace to the 0 button. And I'm going to move my cursor to the left until I go before the first time it crosses the axis. And I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to move my cursor with the right arrow until it goes through the axis and then hit enter. And hit enter one extra time. The first time that this crosses the x-axis, my first solution is negative 2.186. And then the second time, I'm going to do the same sequence of key buttons. So second trace, I want 0. Move my cursor a little bit to the right. It is before it crosses the x-axis. You don't have to move it really far. Hit enter, and then you want to hit it enough times that it goes through the x-axis. Hit enter, and then enter one more time. The second time it crosses the x-axis is at about 0.686. 0.686. And you are just listing those two numbers. The next one was already in standard form. So I'm going to go to y equals. I'm going to type in 4x squared plus 4x plus 1. Graph it. This one, it looks like it just touches the x-axis. So for this one, I'm going to go to second, trace, 0. I'm going to go before it looks like it touches, hit enter. Go after it looks like it touches, hit enter. Enter one more time. And it is at negative 0.499999. That actually rounds to negative 0.500, or just negative 0.5 would be fine. And that is the only solution because it doesn't go through the x-axis, it just touches the x-axis. And then finally the last one. So clear this out, type in your equation, 3x squared minus 5x plus 7, hit graph. And what you'll notice on this one is this one never touches the x-axis. So we would say this one has no solutions or no roots or no x-intercepts. So I'm just going to put that symbol just to remind me that it has no solution because it will never cross or touch the x-axis. So those are your options. I will say the first two where you have two solutions is probably the most common, but I did want you to see how to handle when it only touches once or when it never touches at all. So that is a quick calculator recap of how you do these with the technology. You may have known how to do it with Desmos, but I definitely want to make sure you know how to do it with the TI as well.